Welcome back, everybody. I got a brand new batch of Thrift vinyl finds to share with you today. Kind of a grab bag or catch-all of recent finds over the last couple of weeks. I mentioned in a previous video I'd added a new store to my kind of circuit or route that I do. Popped in there a week or so back, and they had at first glance what I thought were some old 78s, which I don't collect 78s. But when I pulled them out, I discovered they were actually very old 10-inch jazz LPs on vinyl, not the shellac used in 78s. And furthermore, they were in really excellent condition for being as old as they are. Actually, they are now the oldest records in my collection, ranging from 1949 to up to 1954 at the very latest. So I'll show you the ones I picked up. There was quite a bunch of them. These were the ones that looked more interesting. Clyde McCoy, Sugar Blues on, what's that, Mercury? Very excellent condition. And these are kind of like mini LPs. They have a few tracks on each side. Louis Armstrong, New Orleans Days. Great art on these sleeves as well. Decca. Sleeves coming apart a little bit, but otherwise in just fabulous condition. Being older than I am. Frank Sinatra, Songs for Young Lovers. Apparently this is quite a key album in his discography, starting to get more creative control, grouping songs around a theme or concept. This is the only one of the few with kind of scuffs and scratches on it, but still very playable. Duke Ellington, Mood Ellington. Great old Columbia label. Another one by him, the Liberian Suite, which was a set commissioned by him from the government of Liberia to celebrate their anniversary. Fabulous sleeve art there, I love that. And actually the first one that caught my eye, Cal Tjader Trio. Very early one by them on Fantasy and green vinyl. Fortunately does have some scuffs and scratches, but still plays very well. Very early one by them. So that was a pretty interesting haul. Some various other finds from different places, different times. The other day I found at that same store, actually, on a different occasion. Nice copy of at Fillmore East, Allman Brothers Band. I have this already on Red Atlantic, but couldn't leave this behind. I think this is a later pressing on Capricorn. Absolutely immaculate condition on this one. The sleeves are kind of coming apart a little bit, but other than that, in excellent condition. There were a few other classic rock finds kind of scattered around a couple of different stores. A lot I had to leave behind. It wasn't really in good enough condition to pick up. But I did grab Mountain, Nantucket Sleigh Ride. Sleeves a little beat up because somebody wrote free on there. But it's otherwise in quite excellent condition. Vinyl is almost flawless. Bell. Group, of course, Leslie West and Felix Pappalardi. Great heavy, sludgy riff rock. Late 60s rock, kind of psychedelic. This was a blind buy. Looked interesting. Cookin' with the Spats. Pretty obscure one. This is a mid-60s, I believe, when I looked it up on the Canadian Spartan label. I was thinking this was some kind of doo-wop, but it's actually kind of garage rock. First song on here kind of sounds like a redo of Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, but it kind of gets better after that. Kind of cover's pretty beat up, but vinyl is in very decent shape. This one, Claire Lawrence Band. Claire Lawrence was a member of a Canadian psychedelic group called the Collectors. Later went in various different groups. This one is a solo LP, I think the only one issued under the Claire Lawrence Band name, from 1980, I think, on this one. Yeah, 1980, Sloth Records. This is basically jazz fusion. There's a bit of jazz funk on here. There's even a reggae track with a couple of kind of light vocals on it, but it's mainly instrumental. Elevator Wallpaper is the funky one on here. Another one from kind of the classic rock day. There's a lot of stuff I hated to leave behind. There was one store had 2 copies of the Harder They Come soundtrack, classic reggae movie soundtrack, but just not in good enough condition to take home. To see 2 copies of that in the same store. This one, again, cover is a little beat up. Vinyl's very good. Kind of kinks. Marble Arch. Always happy to add kinks to the collection. Another day I found Hymns by Johnny Cash. This is a very early one by him, right after he'd jumped from Sun to Columbia. Apparently was a key part of his move from his label hopping, that he wanted the freedom to record religious albums, which Sam Phillips of Sun Records wasn't keen on him pursuing. So this was the first fruit of that effort. 2i Columbia. Just immaculate condition on this one. Johnny Cash. And not that dissimilar from his early Sun sound. Still got the Tennessee 3 on musical backing there. This was, going back to that new store I've added, this was a find the other day. Count's Rock Band. It's actually credited to, if you can see that, Steve Marcus. Where is he? Yep, there he is. Steve Marcus. Count's Rock Band. Steve Marcus was a jazz saxophonist, influenced by Coltrane. Like many others of his generation, he got turned on by the Beatles, started playing around with the notion of bridging the worlds of jazz and rock. His debut solo LP featured a 10 or 12 minute version of Tomorrow Never Knows. This is his second one. He'd put together a group of basically jazz-minded neighbors of his in New York, including Larry Coryell on guitar, Chris Hills on bass, Mike Knock on piano, and it was produced by Herbie Mann. This is actually a promo copy on Vortex label. You can see that. From 1968, I believe, on this one. So, jazz fusion. A couple of long compositions on here, 12 minutes long, and a few smaller ones. A couple of less prominent covers on this one. The Stones' Backstreet Girl and Simon and Garfunkel's Scarborough Fair. But just some blazing jazz rock fusion. Definitely, that was a blind buy again, but I saw Larry Coryell and Herbie Mann on the back cover credits, and that was sold. This was a very nice find just the other day, actually. Dave Brubeck Quartet, Time Changes, another in his series of time-themed albums, Jazz Time. 2i Columbia, excellent condition on this one, 1963. Some smaller tracks on side 1. Side 2 is one long, side-long suite. Progresses through various movements and feelings. Kind of sounds Christmassy at one point. Kind of sounds like a ballet or a film score at other points. Very much more challenging and complex than the shorter cuts. And it's another further jazz find. I hesitate to show this one. The cover is pretty much destroyed, but I couldn't leave it behind. And the vinyl is actually in surprisingly decent condition. But it is Miles Davis, Sketches of Spain. First Miles Davis I've ever seen in a thrift store. I saw this covered, my heart sank. Somebody's drawn a big red X over it. It's completely separated. There's writing and stuff on the back. Somebody even wrote ecstasy in pen right there, which I kind of like that touch. But when I checked the vinyl, it's surprisingly decent condition. 6i Columbia. As far as I can tell, this is an original or at least a very early pressing. So nice to add that. That was one of the very first jazz LPs I ever checked out on CD way back in the day, before I kind of got more deeply into jazz. Now, the other day I went to one of my regular stores and came up on a huge collection of records that had just hit the bins. A lot of dead common ones, but and a few I have already, but the thing that was interesting about these was they're all in mint condition. Much better than you usually see them. So I picked up a handful of them. I left quite a few behind. It was all kind of late 70s, early 80s LPs. I left a lot of it behind. It must have gone fast. I went back to that same store 2 days later and every single thing was gone. But here is what I picked up. Elton John, Yellow Brick Road. Of course I have this already. This is, I believe, a later pressing, MCA. But just, you can tell, immaculate condition on here. much better than you usually see it. I always buy this album if I see it in good condition. I don't know. Another one I have already. I got to check my copy and see if this is an upgrade. Again, Venus and Mars, very common one, but just flawless condition. Dead mint on all of these. Red Rider, Neruda. This might not be as well known outside kind of my area. Early 80s on this one, I believe, 1982. Red Rider was a group featuring Tom Cochrane on lead vocals. I guess you would say kind of progressive a little bit. There's a clear progressive rock bent with this collection. This was a kind of a political album for them, 1982 as I said, named after the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. Very political themes to this album. The singles were Napoleon Sheds His Skin and Human Race. I definitely remember hearing those on the radio at the time. Those were kind of the local hits. Let me insert. Tom Cochrane would go on to considerable solo success in the 80s and into the 90s. Had a huge hit with Life as a Highway. But he started out in Red Rider. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Works. Works 2, yeah, Volume 2. Nice copy of that. There's one I have already, Haircut 100. I gotta check my copy, see if this is an upgrade again. Just beautiful condition. Now, there was a couple of kind of unusual finds in this haul that didn't kind of fit the general skew of years represented, and this was one of them. This is one I have already on a different pressing, but it is Renaissance. Renaissance were a kind of UK, I guess, classically influenced, kind of in that British folk vein, mixed with progressive rock, mixed with a bit of the classical influence, as I say. Was formed by a couple of former members of the Yardbirds, Keith Relf and Jim McCarty, and with Jane Relf, Keith's sister, on vocals. This is their debut. This is actually a German pressing. I'll show you that quickly, so you can see. German pressing on Island. My other copy of this that I had already has a completely different cover, same album, and is on Red Electra label, still in shrink. Got that at one of my local record stores. So very excellent to find that, and also there at the same time was Live at Carnegie Hall. This is from later in the 1976, double LP on Sire. This was after a lineup change. Jane Relf had left the group and was replaced by Annie Haslam, who was kind of their lead vocalist for the rest of their run. Very haunting vocals, kind of very Celtic, folky inspired with the progressive rock. A couple of side-long tracks on here. Very progressive, very sweet-like. Sound quality, maybe not the greatest on here, but it's quite long. It's over 20 minutes of music on each side, which may affect the sound quality, but good show. It's one by Paul Horn. I always pick this guy's records up when I see him. This is another in his series of Inside-themed albums. He started off with one called Inside the Taj Mahal. This one's from a few years later, Inside the Great Pyramid. It's an embossed cover. And this is him playing jazz flute inside various Egyptian Great Pyramids. So very hushed, very acoustic, very kind of ambient, new agey, I guess you would say, on Mushroom Records. This is 1977. So that's what he's all about. FM, Black Noise. They're a kind of a progressive group, I guess you would say, somewhere between Klaatu, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, kind of in that vein. It featured a guy called Nash the Slash as the leader of the band. He would come out all completely wrapped up in bandages like a mummy. I definitely remember seeing their videos early on in my music listening days. There was a few by Jean-Luc Ponty, a jazz fusion violinist. Worked with the Mothers of Invention and the Mahavishnu Orchestra before going solo. Enigmatic Ocean, this is one I had already. This is an upgrade copy. Cosmic Messenger. And Taste for Passion, a few by him. There's also a bunch by the Alan Parsons Project. I've seen their records many, many times before. Other than the hits, I didn't really, never really investigated them too much. But Tales of Mystery and Imagination, Edgar Allan Poe. And Century, I think this is probably probably a later pressing. Like I say, these are in such mint condition, I thought I may as well take the time to pick them up and check them out. Kind of progressive art rock, I guess you would say. All these albums have kind of themes or concepts. This one, I, Robot, it's a theme about you know, humanity and what it means to be human and things like that. I think these are pretty well known. Eve. These last couple of albums get a little bit more of a disco funk sound to it, I would say, creeping in. And last find from this one haul was a very surprising one. I've never seen a record by these guys over here in Canada. My good friend James Griffiths, the vinyl professor, has done some in-depth videos on these guys. It is The Motors, approved by The Motors. A little bit of slight cover wear, otherwise the vinyl is in mint condition. Includes insert. How to describe these guys? James will correct me if I'm wrong. I would say kind of a mix of pub rock, a little bit of a new wave sheen with some of the keyboards creeping in. Power pop, definitely, with the hooks and the guitar riffs. Some kind of weird, kind of punky influenced lyrics, maybe. You Beat the Hell Out of Me. One that James was talking about, Do You Mind? Which gets into some kind of S&M themes. So that was a pretty decent haul. I got a few other mail order finds to share with you guys soon. I'm going to maybe save those for a different video. So until then, hope everybody's doing well out there. Take care. Cheers, guys.